Which strategy is Nils going for, and then saving the right Pokemon for the right time?
Well, it's time, Pokemon trainers. The battle has begun. It is Corviknight and Sneasler out of the blocks for Nils, and Victor has gone for Garchomp and Amoonguss.
Yeah, Amoonguss is one of those Pokemon where, especially against this lead combination, but also against some of the other Pokemon on Nils' team, it is pretty free to go for some spores. Now, the one Pokemon, of course, on Nils' team that would really help against that is that Vital Spirit Magmar. That would follow me, could redirect any spores and would be a really good counter. However, if you want to bring the Corviknight, you probably want to bring the Indeedee. And then can you really afford to bring the Magmar? Because then where's all the damage coming from? So I think Victor is saying here, okay, if you want to focus on Corviknight, you probably didn't bring the Magmar, and that would make you weak to my Amoonguss.
And I like this terrestrialization as well, because you could potentially see something like a coaching with the Brave Bird to deal so much damage into the grass type that was that Amoonguss, but now that it's water type, it might have a better position here. Sneasler's actually just going to go straight away for the fake out, stop the Amoonguss for going for any spores on this particular turn, but the Stomping Tantrum will find its mark on Sneasler and take a one-hit KO.
Yeah, and there's no focus action on that Sneasler. That is a White Herb, so just straight up that one-hit KO, but now that gives Corviknight one turn to set up that bulk up.
I really like this play, though, because you've enabled the Corviknight to get that defense boost up against anything that maybe Garchomp sent this way, but also critically the attack boost. That can be really helpful with something like a Brave Bird to deal a huge amount of damage. And it does give Nils the utility to bring in a Pokemon from the back. If it is something like that Magmar, you have that Vital Spirit ability. You can draw away in any spores, and Corviknight has a great time.
Yeah, Victor kind of committing here with that Terra Water, but oh, it looks like it is that Magmar. So yeah, Nils' team might not be that weak to Amoonguss at all, but now Victor has committed the terrestrialization already. But I guess at the same time, if it is Magmar for Nils, then, well, what is the last Pokemon? Because, well, you already took out Sneasler, one Pokemon that can do a ton of damage. So, yeah, if it was that Indeedee, then Nils' team really doesn't have that many options to do a lot of damage, and you still have Garchomp, of course, which cannot really deal with a Corviknight, but can definitely deal with a Magmar.
And it looks like Victor's going to change up the ball position actually as well to capitalize on this. Going for the Ninetales, bringing the first weather of this Grand Finals to the floor. The snow is in the sky. This means that you can potentially go for something like a Blizzard on the next turn as Magmar does what it does best, redirects away any potential damage like that Spore that was potentially in play as Dragon Claw comes through. That's probably the only move I think that the Garchomp has that could actually connect onto that opposing Corviknight, but Corviknight happy to go for another bulk up here.
Yeah. Victor playing it a little bit safe here. Of course, he could have gone for a Stomping Tantrum into that Magmar as well, but it is actually the Terra Flying option on the Magmar. So that could have been a way for Nils to mitigate all that damage and ignore it completely. So yeah, I think it's a nice play here by Victor, not really taking too much of a risk, but instead going for the safe Dragon Claw for some guaranteed damage, instead of risking the Terra Flying on the Magmar.
These bulk ups as well are going to help that power trip.
Oh, wow.
Excessive damage. Tyranitar's going to override. We have a Weather Wall, Marcus. I'm happy to see it as the Blizzard comes through. It does manage and get the freeze. Oh my goodness, Ninetales is off the chain right now.
Big freeze here. Corviknight frozen in its place. Let's see if it will be able to move this turn. No, it is not. No Indeedee though on Nils' team. Instead, it is that Tyranitar. That is probably something that Victor, was also surprised by seeing, because it looked that if you were bringing the Corviknight, well, its item, that Psychic Seed, how do you activate it? Well, you need the Indeedee for that. But no, instead, Nils said, okay, I prefer to have the Magmar against the Amoonguss, and I also want to have the Tyranitar against that Ninetales. But because Ninetales was able to hit both Blizzards and get this freeze, this is a huge lead here for Victor.
Ninetales knows that it's in the finals. It's got to find the accuracy regardless of what weather is on the field. Also, the Tyranitar will get the special defense boost from the sand being in effect right now, so that is going to help it out a little bit more against its opposing Ninetales. But honestly, you still have utility with something like the Moonblast. That's something Tyranitar's not going to appreciate, and it's taken a huge amount of damage.
So now a question for Victor is, do you just want to stay in and attack again with a shaky accuracy of Blizzard in the Sandstream, or do you want to... He's going for it, and it does hit again. Wow, that is a risky play, but it might just pay off as Dragon Claw knocks out this Tyranitar.
Tyranitar really doesn't do anything in this match. The Sandstorm has done nothing to stop the accuracy of this Ninetales, and the Corviknight still frozen in animation and not able to break through.
Yeah, so every turn there's going to be a chance that this Corviknight finally unthaws and gets off an attack, but not this turn. And the longer this goes on, the better it is for Victor, of course.
yes, you get every opportunity then to capitalize on getting some more damage on the field. Magmar rejoins. You could always try and go for some redirection to save from the Dragon Claw of the Garchomp, but there's nothing you can do against spread damage here.
And Nils desperately needs to get off this roost with the Corviknight. So that is also why Victor stays in, and he's saying, well, I don't have the time to switch out again, bring up the Ninetales back in again to reset the weather. I want the Corviknight gun right now. And he's banking either on the fact that Blizzard will just connect and knock out the Corviknight, or that the Corviknight stays frozen for another turn.
Because you have no control over this. It's a coin flip whether it's going to unthaw or not. So you need to capitalize on this moment while it has been presented to you, making sure that the Ninetales can just keep going, hoping on the accuracy it's been demonstrating so perfectly in this final, whether it's going to be able to get enough for the knockout. We see the Protect on the Magmar here, not wanting to take any unnecessary damage at this point in time. As Ninetales goes for the Blizzard, it will go into the Protect, but will it connect on Corviknight?
Oh, and it does not. So this will be followed up by a Dragon Claw, but this will not be enough due to all the Poké boosts. Now it's time, Corviknight, now or never. Oh, once again, it looks like 3 turns in a row frozen here for that Corviknight, and now also that Garchomp's damage is, of course, adding up. But, well, I mean, we're still kind of in the same spot. It's going to be another Blizzard, 70% to just KO that Corviknight and potentially win the game on the spot.
We'll have to see if Blizzard can find its accuracy. It is a Choice Specs Ninetales, so it cannot change up its moves. It is locked into this at this point in time. As a Terrestrialization is able to join the field, this will be obviously on Nils' side. It's on that Corviknight. It's going to become a Water type as well. Yeah,
so that would give Corviknight a resistance against those Ice type attacks coming out of the Ninetales, even if it did hit. So maybe buying one extra turn, but let's see, Blizzard. It doesn't hit the Corviknight.
That's the one it needed to connect with, and it manages to avoid. So Corviknight may be frozen in place, but it's still able to avoid these attacks. Dragon Claw comes through onto the Magmar, leaving Nils with just this frozen Corviknight in play for game 1.
Let's see if it can unthaw and finally get off a move. Once again, no, not this time. And now it is safe for Victor to swap out the Ninetales, bring it back in later on, and then go for a freeze dry. So even if the Corviknight, finally unthaws, or maybe just the Dragon Claw is enough now that it, is a Water type. But I think, Victor, with 4 Pokemon against a very low HP Corviknight, he's feeling very comfortable about this. Yeah, a Corviknight down on its luck as well, not getting any of these chances to unthaw. The fact that it's also a Water type now as well means it will be taking this residual sand damage, so it's just going to be whittled away turn upon turn. And if I was Nils, I'd start thinking a little bit more towards game 2. Obviously, this wasn't anything within his control. It's not a play that he made or misplayed in any way. It's just the luck of the draw. And as someone who you know has been running a Pokemon like Sneasler, he'll understand that well. Yeah, that's definitely something he will have to just shake it off for the second game. So just be like, okay, that happened. Well, that's fine. I mean, I tried my best. I think the strategy could have worked going in on the Corviknight, and I think bringing the Magmar was nicely anticipating that Victor might lead heavily into that Amoonguss. But yeah, with his final Dragon Claw knocking down the Corviknight, Victor is only 1 game away of winning his first major tournament. Hey, that's somehow how you do it. The Alolan Ninetales is a Pokemon I've been hyping up, and it's for a reason. Sometimes you get those rolls when you need it most. I have to say, though, as well, Victor looked in a little bit of a difficult spot at the beginning of that match. The Corviknight got 2 bulk ups off in that position, so it was in a very formidable spot. Okay, well, here we go. 1 more game. Being in this spot, I think for Victor, he must feel the pressure. This is what he's been dreaming for years, ever since he aged up into the Masters division, and it's so close for him to grab. Nils on the other side, of course, he is a champion already, but I mean, he wants more. Oh, yes. He wants his Corviknight not to be frozen. You don't want to go out that way, right? You don't want to have it out of your control. And in the same way, we know that Victor wouldn't want to just win that way. He wants to be able to come out and show what he's got. Absolutely, yes. So I think for Nils, he could think about maybe bringing the Indeedee now to activate the Psychic Seed, because that would mitigate the damage of the Ninetales as well. Because of course then with the Psychic Seed you would take less damage, because, well, what setting up the Sandstream from Tyranitar does is it lowers the accuracy, but then it's a little bit more of a guessing game. But yeah, as we've seen, even in the Sandstream, Blizzard connects and it gets the freeze.
That's exactly what that Alolan Ninetales needs to do. You can see Victor celebrating, but I don't think he realized in that moment how important it was going to be for the longevity of that set. You can see the other Pokemon were just able to target down that partner side, clean up the match, and Garchomp. But Victor Medina, one game away from becoming the champion. Let's see if he can do it, or if Nils is going to force a game 3. Indeedee is here, just like you said, Marcus, paired up with the Sneasler, but there's no changes for Victor Medina. Amoonguss and Garchomp out for him.
Yeah, big switch up there for Nils. He knows with his tournament life on the line, he needs to make something happen, and with that Indeedee, it worked so well in some of the previous rounds. Such powerful expanding forces, and looking over on Victor's side, well, if he doesn't have like an Incineroar or a King Gambit switch in, things are looking really dicey for him.
At least you know the Sneasler can't go for a fake out with the terrain in play, but Sneasler has so many other tricks up its sleeve. It could always go for something like the Diaclaw here just to try and get some damage on the board and bring in that secondary effect. Or it has the potential to even go for something like a coaching. You can get that defense up to maybe help against the Garchomp.
Yeah, and it feels like Victor wants to play this position without any switches, instead relying on a defensive terrestrialization to take on this game.
I like this. Sneasler staying in and going for the skies. It's going to turn into a flying type thanks to that terrestrialization, just meaning it cannot be hit by an Earthquake or a Stomping Tantrum that Garchomp can deal out. But it's going to be a terrestrialization for Victor too.
Yeah, that is the defensive terrestrialization I was talking about on the Amoonguss, getting rid of that psychic weakness. And then it should be able to take that expanding force relatively well and hopefully throw back with a Spore.
So we've seen some of the defensive plays. Let's look at the offensive ones. Indeedee kicking off with the expanding force. Will connect on both the opposing Pokemon and put them both into the orange zone. Amoonguss thankfully has this recovery with its berry, so it's not going to be felled by another one of those, but Garchomp may not be so lucky.
Oh, it is a close combat follow-up, but how much will it do? Amoonguss takes this like a champ. No Incineroar switch and also no King Gambit switch, and so both of Victor's Pokemon get a chance to move this turn.
Really nice here for Victor, being able to try and take advantage of this opportunity given as Garchomp goes for the Dragon Claw into the Sneasler. Not enough to get the knockout though, it just hangs on. That is not a focus dash as the Indeedee goes to sleep. A fantastic play for both trainers here.
Yeah, big play here for Victor, going for that Dragon Claw, anticipating a potential Terra Flying, but then also Sneasler. Yeah, as we were saying, it is not a focus dash. That Sneasler is carrying a Wide Herb. So yeah, not going down to that attack just yet. But of course, Indeedee taking a mandatory of sleep next turn means that the damage potential for Nils is really limited.
Yes, Sneasler does have the potential, though. We know that Sneasler's nice and fast. There's no priority on Victor's side of the field, so it could always go for another one of these close combats and I think pick up a KO from either of the Pokemon remaining.
Yeah, I think if you're Victor, you really want to get rid of this Indeedee just because of how strong the expanding force could be later on in the battle. And the play that Victor made turn 1, it might indicate that there is no dark types in the back for him. So Nils maybe also realizing that he has to do something here, switches in the Corviknight right away and activating the Psychic Seed and also going for a coaching to boost up the Corviknight right away.
I love this play. You're being able to get the Psychic Seed boost, you're able to get the coaching boost, but whether or not this Amoonguss is read into that is going to be very interesting. The Dragon Claw was going down into that slot, maybe trying to remove the Indeedee play, but Amoonguss actually going straight for the Pollen Puff, so the double up was going straight to that Indeedee, but Corviknight takes it so well.
Huge play here for Nils. He was able to turn a bad spot into a good spot, I would say. Now all of a sudden this Corviknight is in a perfect position on the battlefield that Amoonguss at such low HP could just be knocked out potentially with a Brave Bird. Sneasler might just go for yet another coaching, and it's really difficult here. Well, what could Victor even do? I mean, you probably have to call back the Amoonguss to try and regenerate some health, but I mean, what do you even try and bring in? I mean, King Gambit might be one Pokemon, but Nils has already shown that he is ready to predict a switch like that.
Exactly, and you can see his head in his hands a little bit as Victor Medina does indeed recall that Amoonguss going to be able to use his regenerate ability to get some HP. And sure, Incineroar can come onto the field. The Intimidate helping out against Sneasler, but the Mirror Armor on that Corviknight will send that Intimidate straight back. As Sneasler calls it perfectly. Close combat goes down as the Incineroar, but the Intimidate paying off a little bit there.
Yeah, big close combat coming out of that Sneasler once again into the Amoonguss slot, and Garchomp's Dragon Claw now finally knocking out that Sneasler, but Corviknight has another chance to go for a move. It is already kind of boosted due to the coaching, but could set up another bulk up if it wanted to.
Yes, it has the flexibility and room to do that, but it's actually going to do the Power Trip using those boosts it's already got to get the KO on the Garchomp.
Wow, Power Trip. It is... What year are we talking about? Is this like a Crocodile in 2017? No, it is a Corviknight all the way a couple years later, but knocking out this Garchomp here in the finals, and that is exactly what Nils needed here.
But look at what button Victor Medina is hovering over. It is the Alolan Ninetales, the nemesis of that Corviknight from game 1. As Tyranitar joins the field, let's look at the speeds here for the weather.
Yeah, Tyranitar should be slower. So Alolan Ninetales should activate the Snow Warning first, and then it's right overwritten by Sandstream. This is exactly the type of weather game that you were hinting at.
Yes, exactly, but we know the Alolan Ninetales cannot be stopped necessarily by the sand in the sky. It will, of course, mean the accuracy of these blizzards is going to be a bit dicey, but if it can connect, if it can get another freeze, that could be amazing for Victor, but it's not something you can rely on here. I still think the Corviknight looks to be in a really strong position.
Yeah, but let's not forget about the Indeedee in the back for Nils. That Pokemon is asleep, so and it hasn't even taken its first turn of sleep. So Nils is really relying heavily on both of this Pokemon at the moment. Fake Out, still working, of course, in Psychic Terrain because Corviknight is up in the air and Blizzard once again hits both targets, but will we see another freeze? Well, not this time.
No, but we do see the flinch at least on this opposing Corviknight thanks to the Fake Out and the Rock Slide. Tyranitar really on a rampage here, being able to get the knockout on the Incineroar and put the Alolan Ninetales into a difficult spot. The sand as well chipping away is going to mean that I don't think it can take another sand turn after that.
Yeah, probably not, no. That would do a little bit too much.
Yeah.
So, Ninetales down to the wire. Of course, Pollen Puff, that is one way to keep its ally healthy. So let's see, Blizzard would need to get a couple of freezes. Let's see, no, it's not happening. Roost will come out from this Corviknight. And as long as this Tyranitar connects with the move on Alolan Ninetales, it would only be that Amoonguss for Victor.
Yes, Amoonguss being too slow on the field to be able to get that Pollen Puff in play. The critical hit not necessary at all as Ninetales returns to his Pokeball. And Amoonguss has a little bit of a mountain to climb here. It can go for the Pollen Puff, but it was going to try and maybe hope for a Rock Slide miss there to facilitate that health regeneration for the Alolan Ninetales.
And just like that, it looks like Nils has found a way as Victor is hovering over that forfeit button. He knows that, well, with only an Amoonguss, there's no way to get through 1, 2, or even 3 Pokemon. He will concede the second game, and it means we will go to a game 3.
This is so exciting. We've had an absolutely incredible tournament so far here in Lille, but there's been a lot of very fast 2-0s. But in the grand finals, we're going to be able to kick it to a game 3. I love to be able to see that.
And I'm sure Victor, he was already tasting victory there after that first turn. It went super well for him, right? He was predicting this Terra flying on the Sneasler, hitting with the Dragon Claw. He kind of predicted the Expanding Force, going for the Terra Water, got off the sleep, but then the Corviknight joined the battle.
As they go into game 3 to find out who will be our champion, it's Indeedee and Magmar, 2 supportive Pokemon out front and center for Nils. And it's going to be a shake-up of Pokemon on Victor's side. It's that Amoonguss, but this time it's joined by Kingambit.
Yeah, that is the Pokemon I wanted to see, and I think that is a great adaptation here for Victor, as with that Kingambit, sure, it is weak to Heatwave from the Magmar, but Magmar is not the most offensive Pokemon, and Kingambit is carrying that Assault Vest, but more importantly, it is the perfect Pokemon to have on the field against this Indeedee. Amoonguss, on the other hand, well, it's not that great to have here against this Magmar because Nils could just try and go for a Follow Me, redirect any Spore that might be aimed at the Indeedee. But yeah, Indeedee, what are you gonna do? You could try and go for that Expanding Force. I mean, the Amoonguss over on Victor's side does not have Protect, so you would get some damage off guaranteed.
I actually really like this lead from Nils because you can see what the leads of Victor are going to be and then adjust accordingly. The Corviknight able to come in for the Indeedee that isn't going to apply a lot of pressure, particularly if that Amoonguss does terrestrialize, but the Magmar really is the thorn in Victor's side with this particular lead. You can go for that redirection. There's really nothing Amoonguss can do for you, and Kingambit itself isn't going to deal a huge amount either thanks to the Eviolite. Yeah,
no Follow Me though. Instead it's going to be the Heat Wave. Let's see, decent chunk of damage on the Kingambit. And a little bit of chip damage to that Garchomp, but now Kowtow Cleave hitting the Corviknight on the switch. And of course, Corviknight has Roost, so this damage is not permanent.
Yes, and Magmar again can go for that redirection and draw in the attack, so Corviknight doesn't have to take another one of those hits. It's probably going to do about a third of damage and then put Corviknight into a bit of a dangerous spot.
Yeah, Victor has to think about this. Okay, if Corviknight goes for a Roost this turn, like what's my best option to set up for a next turn? Because if you give this Corviknight an opening to get back to full HP, to set up, that is what Victor really wants to avoid. But against this Magmar, with the Heat Wave, there's always, as you pointed out, the chance of a burn. So is that a game that Victor wants to play, or does he want to maybe, yeah, reset the board just a little bit and maybe bring in the Ninetales?
There's also terrestrialization. That Magmar is a flying Terra type, and that way you can avoid any of this ground type damage that the Garchomp might want to deal out. The Stomping Tantrum is going to come through, connect on that Magmar, not enough to get the one-hit KO, but puts it in a very dangerous spot to a follow-up in the next turn. Magmar still on the offensive. The Heat Wave is going to catch that Alolan Ninetales on the switch-in, and again, deals some damage out on the field as Corviknight uses the opportunity to go for the roost. This is a nice play for Nils. You get all of that juicy HP back.
Yeah, Corviknight back at full HP, but Magmar took a lot of damage. Of course, with this play, Victor would have been fine if the Magmar terrestrialized over on Nils' side, because then sure, Stomping Tantrum doesn't do any damage, but well, then now it is a flying type, and now my Ninetales can deal with it much better with Blizzard. So nice play again by Victor, and now he has set up a position where the Ninetales can go for a couple of Blizzards, and at least for the next couple of turns, unless Nils maybe has that Tyranitar in the back as the fourth and final Pokemon, it seems that the Ninetales is in a pretty decent spot here.
And this time, unlike Game 1, that Psychic Seed special defense boost has been applied to the Corviknight, so the Blizzards will be dealing less damage. That's exactly what Ninetales is up to.
Oh!
Magmar not even going to be felt.
Oh!
It happens to Corviknight again. Ninetales does the double.
Corviknight, what are you doing? You need attack and 1 HP on the Ninetales. Corviknight is frozen solid. What is going on? That Blizzard. Oh my god. Not able to knock out the Magmar, but then getting that freeze on the Corviknight now means that, well, Ninetales might get in another one of those Blizzards. It hung on at 1 HP. That is exactly what Victor needed.
It doesn't even have the audacity to be KO'd to the Heat Wave. It hangs on that 1 HP remaining. The accuracy of these Blizzards are going to be hitting their mark thanks to the snow at the moment as well. Ninetales will be able to get the KO on the Magmar, chip away at the Corviknight. Nils does not have a safe option here. I love this play though. You have to bank on it. High risk, high reward, the helping hand. If the Corviknight is able to get through this turn and unthought, it could do a huge amount of damage.
Magmar goes down to the Blizzard, but does the Corviknight attack?
It's frozen solid. This is heartbreak for Corviknight and heartbreak for Nils.
And now with the Pollen Puff, all that hard work, all the damage on the Alolan Ninetales will be negated. Well, half of it will be. And that Ninetales, again, looking to be in such a strong spot.
I mean, you do still have the Indeedee, and this time it has not been put to sleep. It's wide awake and ready for action. The Psychic Terrain is in play. You could always go for that Expanding Force, try and get the KO on the Amoonguss, or at the very least force the Terrestrialization that Victor still has not used.
Nils, on the other hand, though, also hasn't used Terrestrialization. So if you want it, he could go for a Terra Psychic here on the Indeedee to counter a potential Terra Water on the Amoonguss, and maybe that would still be enough to get the knockout, even if Victor's Amoonguss terrestrializes to Water. But I think one thing's pretty certain, Victor definitely wants to bring out Kingambit right here, because, yeah, Expanding Force is coming.
Yes, and we've seen Nils use this Indeedee perfectly in top 4 as well with that Expanding Force, particularly if it does want to terrestrialize up to deal that additional damage. But it doesn't matter how much you give to this Indeedee, the Psychic typing will not have an effect on that Kingambit. I like this adjustment by Nils. The Corviknight is just sitting there on the field. Let's bring in a Pokemon that can actually attack. And
let's see which Pokemon is terrestrializing here. It is the Amoonguss.
Yes, going to become a water type here on this Amoonguss. This is a play that Victor has made in all 3 games, making sure that this Amoonguss has this defensive capability.
And now it will be able to take that Expanding Force definitely much better, but how much damage is it going to do? Oh, it's still enough for the knockout. Wow. Didn't even need the Terra Psychic to boost up that damage. Looks like Nils definitely knew his damage calculations there. And yeah, for Victor, oh, that was not a good turn.
No, this is a proper swing of momentum. You cannot underestimate this Indeedee. We saw it in top 4. We've seen it again. I love the way that Nils has also brought in this Sneasler. It's now in a prime position to go down against this Kingambit. You can apply a lot of pressure with something like a close combat. And this Garchomp in the back, we know that the Sneasler has this kind of edge right now.
Yeah, and as Psychic Terrain runs out, there's 3 important things. Sneasler could go for a Fake Out, Kingambit could go for a Sucker Punch, and Indeedee's Expanding Force is now no longer multi-target hit. However, yeah, the damage against Garchomp, it would be, I guess, kind of similar, but now you really have to wonder, do you want to go for a Fake Out on the Kingambit potentially? I mean, there's the threat of a close combat into the Kingambit. There's no more terrestrialization available for Victor, so this is a tough spot to navigate.
Do you think it's worth almost switching out the Indeedee to reset that terrain? You can bring the Corviknight in.
Yes.
You know, it doesn't matter if it's not going to do anything, but Kingambit's going to be the first switch here for Victor.
Yeah, I would have liked to see that switch, but it looks like Nils has other plans and just wants to go for the Expanding Force without the terrain, maybe powering it up with a Terra Psychic. Oh wow, once again, he's putting everything on that Indeedee.
Oh, it's looking strong, it's looking sassy, it's looking like it really wants to try and get a KO on something like this Garchomp.
I think this might be enough. Let's see, Expanding Force coming out into the Garchomp.
Can it do it? This Indeedee has done it before, and it does! Critical hit KOs the Garchomp! Nils is back in
absolutely back in the game. And if the Sneasler went for a close combat, which it did, that will do a ton of damage to the Alolan Ninetales as well, knocking it out right away.
Oh, in an absolute turn of events, Nils flips the script here.
Victor down to his very last Pokemon. It is a King Gambit, and that is weak to close combat, and it cannot terrestrialize. So it looks like Nils might have done it.
I mean, the Indeedee definitely in a spot where it can't do anything to this opposing King Gambit, but Sneasler is in the prime position to do so.
Absolutely, yes. So I'm expecting this Indeedee to swap out into the Corviknight, and then Sneasler will just go for a close combat, and if it is enough to get the knockout, Nils Dunlop will be the Lille regional champion.
The Corviknight coming back in for good measure. Victor did so hard to try and stop it in its tracks, but the close combat gets the KO, and Nils Dunlop, he's done it before, he's done it again. He is the Lille regional champion. His third regional victory, not one, not two, but 3 times.